Good evening and welcome to The Story. I'm Evan Watson. A top priority in the Portland metro region is homelessness, and a big part of any regional solution is the Supportive Housing Services, or SHS tax, a monster funding source for anything from mental health care to addiction treatment to shelter beds and outreach. But are voters in the region running out of patience and trust that the tax is actually leading to results? It's our big story tonight. Metro, the regional government spanning Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties, oversees the tax. And Metro commissioners want to renew the SHS tax well before it expires in 2030, considering it funds about half of the region's homeless services. But a new poll shows voters have doubts. They're growing more and more skeptical that the tax, paid by higher income households and large businesses, is effective at all. Just 46% of likely voters, highlighted here in blue, say this November that they would definitely or probably vote to extend the tax. 39% say they would definitely or probably vote against a renewal, that bit in orange. The poll found a growing number of people don't believe the program is working as intended. Pollsters asked 822 likely November voters for their thoughts over the past few weeks. The researchers concluded, in sum, a potential measure to reauthorize the Regional Supportive Housing Services tax would face a challenging path to passage in November 2025. Earlier this year, Metro leaders abandoned the idea of putting the SHS tax up for a renewal vote in May. Now, a November push could be in doubt. Metro President Lynn Peterson has been leading a work group to reform the Supportive Housing Services program. Just yesterday, she acknowledged the lack of results.
We all recognize that what we have is not working. And so how do we actually move to a better model and learn that we need to iterate this? I don't think that what we create over the next month, when we vote to change the governance, I don't think it'll be perfect then, but it'll be the start of something towards a betterness of decision making and moving things quicker and faster. And actually getting decisions made.
Peterson said the Tri-County Planning Body has done a lot of work, making recommendations for change that ultimately go nowhere.
There's no one to pick it up. It's completely up to the counties, and it's not very public, and there's no accountability built into that framework.
Perhaps most concerning, this SHS tax was approved in 2020 and, as we said earlier, is a funding cornerstone for the region's homeless services. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent each year. You would think that with all that money, there's a clear plan and system for how and where to spend the funds, right?
While we might still have difference of opinion about the durability of this tax, I do think that folks came together on understanding that we don't have a system and we need a system, and no amount of money is going to buy us a system if we don't get a little bit uncomfortable and create something new.
That's Christine Lewis you heard there, a Metro Council member. Despite all this money spent thus far, the homeless crisis is getting worse, not better. In May, Multnomah County reported that the number of people becoming homeless each month is outpacing the number getting into housing with the county's help. But Peterson and other elected leaders say the SHS tax has helped treat, care for, shelter, and house thousands of people that would not have had that support otherwise. As it stands, a potential renewal vote of the SHS tax looks tight, at least according to this latest poll. Peterson has pitched lowering the tax rate to make it more palatable, and Metro Council will need to decide if it's right for the November ballot this year as they try and extend it beyond 2030. Peterson's previous proposal from earlier this year would have extended the tax to the year 2050. So what do you think of the SHS tax? Would you vote to extend it? Why or why not? What reforms would need to happen to sway you one way or the other? Let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. Here's a live look inside Portland City Hall tonight, where City Council is set to approve its budget. Their meeting began at 6 o'clock and it's expected to last several hours. The budget proposed is just over $8.6 billion. Of course, much of the drama in this budget season has been around funding for Portland police and proposed cuts to parks maintenance. It's all set to be hashed out tonight. Once the budget is finalized, we'll be sure to bring you the highlights. To Northwest Portland now, in a story that may sound familiar, neighbors are sounding off on the city's plan for a new overnight homeless shelter, one that's slated to fill a vacant office building at the edge of the Pearl District, right next to I-405. This is different from the Blanchet House plan for a women's shelter in Northwest that we've talked about before, but it is near that building. The city says this other shelter is early in the planning stages, but moving forward. Catherine Cook has the story.
On the corner of Northwest 15th and Northrop, you'll find the talk of the Pearl District.
And it's not going to be good.
The future home of an overnight homeless shelter.
We worry about, the house values.
The city of Portland leased the building and tells KGW they hope to open the shelter by September. It would be low barrier, meaning adults who stay here can be drunk or high. They just can't bring drugs with them. Maximum capacity, 200 beds.
We'll start at kind of a low operational number and build into capacity.
Rob Lane is with the city's Portland Solutions program. He says the shelter will help Mayor Keith Wilson reach his goal of adding 1,500 new overnight shelter beds by December.
To make sure that they have a safe and place to sleep each night, to get them off the street so that they can get up and do the work that they need to do to move on to their next step of their housing journey.
So they come out every day and where do they go?
Kathy Dunn has lived in the Pearl for 18 years. She says plans for the shelter left her feeling blindsided by the city.
They want the collaboration of the community. No one said anything to us at all.
Yeah, I don't think the neighborhood should be subject to an irresponsible campaign promise.
Todd Zarnitz is president of the Northwest District Association. He believes addiction is the root of Portland's homeless crisis. He doesn't think this shelter will solve that. He's also frustrated by its close proximity to another overnight shelter. Blanchet House just announced plans for a 75-bed shelter for women 2 blocks away.
The neighborhood's perspective is that if you're going to concentrate a problem, have a solution for the problem, and nothing's really being offered here.
I mean, people need to get off the street. That's not a permanent solution.
But for David Mink, it's a start. He lives nearby and supports opening the shelter on Northrop.
As I said, what are you going to do? Say, well, they have to be out there somewhere else. I mean, if there's a building and it's available, to me, it makes sense.
How it might impact businesses here is another concern. The Pearl District, already an oyster shell of what it once was, riddled with empty storefronts.
Everybody's just going to turn off the lights, and we're going to see this destabilize the community, and that's a very real fear.
Catherine Cook, KGW News.
The city says as of now, there are no listening sessions or town halls scheduled to discuss this shelter, but they tell us they're meeting with neighborhood associations and stakeholders to do site assessments and walkthroughs of the property to help shape their plans. Considering the feedback we got on our Blanchet House or shelter plan in Northwest and our story on that, I imagine many of you may be gritting your teeth about this plan. Share your thoughts with us. If you don't want a shelter in Northwest, where would you want it to go? Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. To Salem now, and an update on one of the major pieces of legislation being worked on in these waning days of session, that big transportation funding package. House Bill 2025 was unveiled earlier this month, giving lawmakers just a few weeks to hammer out a plan to try and keep ODOT financially stable or risk major cuts to services like road maintenance. Since the bill was introduced, several hours worth of public testimony on the plan poured in at a series of public hearings last week. At the same time, the written feedback over the same time period was not glowing. In our latest tally, there have been nearly 3,000 written comments submitted. Those who oppose the bill as written outnumber supporters nearly 2-to-1. It is worth noting that we have spotted a handful of duplicate comments, so these numbers are not necessarily scientific, but you get the picture. Some of the biggest issues are the significant tax and fee hikes in the bill, including an increase to the gas tax. And now there are even concerns about the bill with amendments failing to even get out of committee. New reporting today from OPB notes that Democrat Mark Meek is a no vote right now. It requires a majority vote in committee, and if Democrats are not united in that vote, the bill could die there, assuming all Republicans vote no, of course, which is expected. And even if it's adjusted to the point where Senator Meek changes his mind and it passes out of committee, it could still face an uphill battle on the House and Senate floors, where it would require a supermajority vote, meaning 2/3 approval. As lawmakers continue to work on the bill with a week and a half of session left, patience among some of them appears to be wearing thin. During a meeting of the Committee on Transportation Reinvestment last night, there was an interesting exchange between Representative Paul Evans, a Democrat from Monmouth, and the Legislative Affairs Director of Transportation for the Association of Oregon Counties. We're going to play the moment in full for you and then break down some of the key points afterwards. Here it is.
I'm trying to figure out how to ask this in the most appropriate way, but I'm just going to ask. I don't think it's a surprise that I have, for a while, been suggesting that some counties are doing everything they can, and some counties maybe are letting the state take the hits and kind of not doing everything maybe they can. 13 counties have voted to secede. Why should we invest in the 13 counties that have decided that they want to be somewhere else? Why should I fight to get the 50-30-20 thing if there are counties that have had a vote saying that they want to leave?
Co-Chair Representative Evans, thank you for the question. And respectfully, I would point out that it's the voters in those counties that have made those determinations, certainly not the governing bodies.
Follow up.
Yes.
So you're saying the county commissioners would commit to remaining in the union if we actually invest money? Is that what I'm hearing?
Co-Chair Representative Evans, I can't make a commitment on behalf of the county commissioners, but
Maybe you should ask.
Thank you, Representative.
So yeah, a little tense in there, you might say. And this look here pretty much sums it up right there. But let's dive into some of what was discussed. This is all about transportation funding. And when Representative Evans mentioned 50-30-20, that's a loose way of talking about how money from the State Highway Fund is dispersed. 50% to ODOT, 30% to Oregon counties, and 20% to Oregon cities. Again, it's not exactly that, but it's traditionally how the legislature has divided the splits. Representative Evans is questioning that formula as it relates to the Greater Idaho movement. He said that 13 counties have, quote, voted to secede, appearing to ponder the possibility that those counties should not get State Highway Fund dollars, considering they don't really want to be part of Oregon. Here's a map of the counties he's talking about. And to be clear, the counties have not exactly voted to secede, but the measures they have approved either express support for the idea of becoming part of Idaho or direct their county officials to hold discussions about the possibility. We've talked about the movement a lot here on this story. The odds of it actually happening, getting the necessary approvals from the state governments and U.S. Congress are next to zero. But based on Representative Evans' questioning, the intent behind the votes in those 13 counties surely means something. The co-chair of the committee, Senator Chris Gorsuch, ended the meeting last night by quashing any idea of withholding funding from those counties.
I just want to say one thing, and that is I understand some of the frustrations that have been expressed. On the other hand, the state of Oregon is the state of Oregon. And I would never recommend using transportation dollars against counties that may be unhappy with the overall state administration. I understand it. I understand what was said, but I think that as long as it's the state of Oregon, the state of Oregon has a responsibility to maintain those roads and bridges.
Nonetheless, lawmakers have until June 29th to craft the bill and get it passed. The next work session on the bill is tomorrow afternoon. We also wanted to give you a progress report on other bills in Salem we've been following. Senate Bill 243, which would ban bump stocks and other rapid fire devices for guns, passed out of the House Rules Committee. It passed the Senate last month and now goes to the Joint Ways and Means Committee. Republicans are calling it unconstitutional and deeply flawed. Two other gun safety bills are still in committee. House Bill 3075 would lay the groundwork to implement Measure 114, and House Bill 3076 would require gun dealers to be licensed by the state starting in 2027. Another one we're keeping a close eye on is Senate Bill 686, which would require online platforms like Google or Meta to pay local news outlets for using their content. That one passed the Senate Rules Committee last week. Senator Jeff Golden says he's heard a lot of support.
There is very significant support for this bill among, I'm going to say, the majority of the smaller outlets and journalism outlets in Oregon generally. they don't all have the same business model or position, so they don't have total consensus. But I'm remembering a lot more support as I read through testimony.
The Power Act, which sets up a separate rate-paying tier for data centers that use huge amounts of energy, cruised through both chambers this month, and Governor Kotek signed it earlier this week. It impacts facilities that demand more than 20 megawatts of energy, which is about the demand of a small city. The bill goes into effect immediately, but the separate amount that companies will have to pay has not yet been determined. Kotek also signed a bill earlier this month that makes changes to Oregon's famed bottle bill. Now stores will stop collecting bottles and cans after 8 p.m., and the bill will help fund mobile drop-off sites for cans and bottles. That bill took effect immediately. She also signed the Cash is King bill, which educates businesses that they have to accept cash, and the ban on discriminatory book bans. But there's one more piece of legislation that we want to tell you about, one that we never knew we needed.
The clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 13, designating the T-bone as the official state steak.
Yes, finally, the T-bone is now the official state steak of Oregon. Republican Representative Mark Owens dressed for the occasion.
How many people know what the #1 ag commodity that was sold in 2022 was? And the value of that product, which is beef, was nearly $800 million.
This bill had unanimous support in the Senate, but not quite in the House. Republican Jamie Kate of Lebanon and Democrat Tui Tran of Portland voted no. They must prefer a different cut. Up next on The Story, an election results mix-up on the Oregon coast involving two dueling ballot measures, what the state has to say about what happened here, and why a victory for one side all of a sudden became a defeat when The Story returns. To the Oregon coast now in the city of Cannon Beach, a surprising turn of events when it comes to those dueling ballot measures we told you about back in the spring that appeared on the May ballot. To recap, Measure 4-235 was the result of a citizen petition. It would require a public vote for all city projects over $6.5 million that are funded by non-emergency finances, essentially taking decision-making power away from city council on big projects. In response, council created an opposing measure, 4-236, which would clarify the city charter and basically keep things as they are now, where the 5-person city council has the final say. When we last checked in on the unofficial results at the end of May on the Secretary of State's website, the measures were too close to call. 235, requiring a public vote, appeared like it would pass, as the yes votes led by about a dozen votes. And 236, clarifying council's power, appeared like it would fail, with no votes leading by a similar margin. But then, this happened this week. On the Secretary of State's result page for Clatsop County, this message now appears at the top. Results for those two measures were mistakenly reversed, meaning the results for 235 are showing up for 236 and vice versa. The issue was found on Monday when the county was certifying results. The Secretary of State's office says it was a manual data entry error where two internal tracking numbers for the measures were entered incorrectly, causing the mix-up. So now, after an audit, here's how it all shook out. 235, requiring a public vote on big projects in Cannon Beach, failed by just 9 votes out of the 645 total. And 236, clarifying the city charter and keeping things the way they are now, passed by a 13-vote margin. In a statement today, Deputy Secretary of State Michael Kaplan wrote, "The Secretary of State's office takes full responsibility for the error that caused the results for 2 ballot measures in Cannon Beach to be flipped in the unofficial election night reporting website. We conducted a full review of the unofficial results for every other race in the state and confirmed this was an isolated incident." He went on, "We are adding additional controls to prevent errors like this from happening again because we know Oregonians are counting on us to get this right." Keep it here. We're digging for old when the story returns. Now to Salem, where there is quite literally some digging for old going on at Willamette University. An archaeological dig to uncover relics from more than 150 years ago. Devin Haskins shows us how the city and Grand Ronde tribe are both involved.
At Willamette University,
I think I overfilled this one a tad bit, but it's okay.
students and archaeologists are trying to uncover remnants of Oregon's past.
You have to go through everything because, as I say, archaeology is destructive science.
While some things are worth keeping,
Probably weird stone, but
others are not.
worm.
The city of Salem has organized this archaeological dig on the campus
So we're about 27 centimeters in.
to find a piece of indigenous history.
The Indian Manual Labor Training School.
Built in 1842, the school was set up by Methodist missionaries to train young orphan members of the Santiam Kalapuya tribe. Here, students would learn to make shoes, ironwork, and essential trades to make them employable.
We have individuals that as children learned English, learned the ways of the Euro-American system here that then later in life became leaders.
But as much as the school taught them,
it was an unkind place.
It also stripped them of their heritage.
A lot of the students died under their care, and those that did run away, they were brought back and essentially imprisoned.
2 years after it opened, it was shut down because of the horrendous conditions. It was sold to what would become Willamette University, burning down in 1872. It's a past.
Well, we think that this might be some kind of nail
that can't be buried or forgotten.
Archaeology is an access to understanding the past. It provides a physical evidence of what has occurred.
So we know this was manufactured exactly in the period of time.
So far, in the multiple digs that have taken place,
this is a piece of slate.
They found plenty to be excited about.
This is part of a shoe that was down at about 40 centimeters.
And while they wait for the dates to be confirmed through carbon dating,
are made both of leather and rubber.
It's a reason to be excited.
It's exciting because it gives us a glimpse into the people that were here.
This is a public dig site, so if you're wanting to come out and see what they're doing and learn about what they've found, they're at Willamette University near Smolin Hall. They'll be here from Wednesday through Saturday until the end of the month. In Salem, I'm Devin Haskins, KGW News.
That is the end of our show for tonight. Thank you for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. If you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we do re-air that episode at 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. over on our TV and streaming app, KGW+. You can also catch it the next day at 11:30 in the morning. Download the free KGW+ app now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Have a great Wednesday night, and I will see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30. Until then, stay safe. Have a great one.